Daniel Brooks thought his brutal shift would end like any other, exhausted, alone, barely holding his life together. But when he found two small figures begging in a blizzard, their frozen hands outstretched in desperate plea, he made a split-second decision that would shatter every rule he'd ever followed. What he didn't know was that saving these abandoned twins would cost him everything he'd worked for. His job, his stability, the fragile peace he'd built since his wife's death. But in losing everything, he'd discover something he thought was gone forever. The courage to live again, and a family born not from blood, but from the kind of love that refuses to let go. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story about sacrifice, redemption, and the quiet heroism of ordinary people will remind you why kindness matters most when it costs the most. The snow had started as a whisper, gentle flakes drifting down like forgotten memories. But by the time Daniel Brooks finished his shift, the whisper had become a roar. He sat in the driver's seat of the city bus, engine idling at the depot, watching the weather turn mean. Fat snowflakes swirled in the headlights. The wind rattled the bus windows. His supervisor's voice crackled through the radio. "All drivers be advised. Weather service just upgraded to blizzard warning. Complete your routes and return to depot. No exceptions." Daniel pressed the talk button. "Copy that. Route 47 heading out now." He released the button and rubbed his face with both hands. Exhaustion sat heavy in his bones. He'd been driving since 6 this morning, 12 hours with only 2 short breaks. His back ached, his eyes burned, and all he wanted was to pick up his boys from Mrs. Patterson's apartment and collapse on his couch. But the city didn't care if you were tired. The buses had to run until the last possible moment. People needed to get home. People like him who couldn't afford to miss work even when the sky was falling. Daniel pulled out of the depot and merged into the snow-choked street. Traffic moved like molasses. Brake lights glowed red through the white curtain. Somewhere ahead, someone honked. Frustrated, scared, or both. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from Mrs. Patterson. "Boys doing fine. Take your time. Stay safe." Daniel smiled despite everything. Mrs. Patterson was a blessing. 72 years old and still watching his sons 3, sometimes 4 times a week. She refused to take more than $20, even though Daniel knew she deserved triple that. "They remind me of my grandbabies," she always said. "Besides, what else am I going to do? Watch TV all day?" The bus crawled through the downtown district. Empty storefronts, closed restaurants, a few desperate souls trudging through the snow with their heads down, fighting the wind. Daniel's route normally took 45 minutes. Tonight it would take twice that, maybe more. He thought about his boys waiting warm and safe in Mrs. Patterson's living room. Caleb probably had his nose in a book. That kid read like his life depended on it. And Liam would be building something with blocks, talking to himself in that sweet sing-song voice 5-year-olds had. The thought made Daniel's chest tight. His boys, his whole world, the only good thing left after Maria died. 3 years. It had been 3 years since the heart attack that took her in the middle of the night. Sudden, no warning. Just there one moment, and gone the next. Daniel still woke up sometimes reaching for her side of the bed. Still caught himself about to tell her something funny, Liam said. Still felt the sharp stab of absence when he came home to an empty apartment. But he couldn't fall apart. Couldn't let the grief swallow him whole. Because Caleb and Liam needed him to be strong. Needed him to wake up every morning and drive this bus and put food on the table. So that's what he did. Day after day. Barely holding it together, but holding it together nonetheless. The radio crackled again. "Attention all drivers! Multiple shelters reporting capacity. Expect increased ridership." Daniel's stomach knotted. More people meant more stops. More stops meant getting home even later. But complaining wouldn't change anything. He'd do his job. Get through the route. Pick up his boys. Survive another day. The bus stopped at 5th and Market. Two passengers got on, a young woman with a screaming toddler and an older man who looked like he'd been sleeping outside. Daniel nodded at them both, kept his expression neutral, treated everyone with the same tired dignity. "Stay safe out there," he said as they paid their fares. The woman smiled weakly. The old man just grunted and shuffled toward the back. They rolled on, past the library, past the courthouse, past the boarded-up community center that used to host Caleb's basketball games before budget cuts shut it down. The snow fell harder. Visibility dropped. Daniel leaned forward, squinting through the windshield, trying to see the road. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Mrs. Patterson. "Weather getting bad. You want me to keep the boys overnight?" Daniel's first instinct was to say yes. Keep them safe. Keep them warm. Don't risk driving in this mess with precious cargo. But he couldn't. He needed to see them. Needed to tuck them into bed and kiss their foreheads and remind himself why he kept fighting. He texted back with one hand while steering with the other. "I'll be there soon. Thank you." The bus lurched over a pothole hidden beneath the snow. The passengers swayed. The toddler's crying intensified. "Sorry, folks," Daniel called back. "Road's getting rough." No one responded. They were all too focused on their own survival. Daniel checked his watch. 8:30. His shift officially ended at 9, but at this rate he wouldn't finish the route until 9:30, maybe 10. He took a deep breath, let it out slow, kept driving. The last official stop was at 6th and Warren, an intersection near the edge of the downtown district where the buildings gave way to warehouses and empty lots. Usually nobody waited there this late. Usually Daniel just rolled through and headed back to the depot. But tonight, as the bus approached the stop, Daniel saw something that made his heart freeze. Two small figures stood on the corner. Children. Little girls, from the look of them. They stood close together, huddled against the wind. Daniel's foot moved to the brake automatically. The bus slowed, stopped. He stared through the snow-streaked windshield, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The girls looked maybe 7 years old, identical, twins. They wore thin jackets, too thin for this weather. No hats, no gloves. Their dark hair whipped around their faces in the wind, and they were holding out their hands, not waving, not signaling the bus, begging. Daniel's stomach dropped. He'd seen plenty of rough things driving this route, homeless people, drug addicts, people screaming at invisible demons, but he'd never seen children begging on a street corner in the middle of a blizzard. Behind him, the passengers shifted restlessly. The old man called out, "We moving or what?" Daniel didn't answer. He was already standing, already moving toward the door. The cold hit him like a fist when he stepped outside. The wind screamed. Snow stung his face. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him, but he could see the girls. They stood perfectly still, watching him approach. Their eyes were huge, dark, filled with something Daniel recognized immediately: fear. "Hey," he said gently, crouching down to their level. "What are you two doing out here?" The girls looked at each other. Then the one on the left, slightly taller, slightly more confident, spoke. "Waiting for our mama." Her voice was barely audible over the wind. Daniel's heart cracked. "Where is she?" She said to wait here. Said she'd come back." "When did she say that?" The girl's eyes dropped. "This morning. This morning. They'd been standing here since this morning." Daniel felt rage and pity war inside his chest. What kind of mother left her children on a corner in a snowstorm? What kind of desperation or cruelty or madness drove someone to abandon 2 little girls? But those questions didn't matter right now. What mattered was getting these children out of the cold. "What are your names?" Daniel asked. "I'm Ava," the taller girl said. "This is Lily." Lily said nothing. She just stared at Daniel with those huge, frightened eyes. "Okay, Ava. Okay, Lily. Listen to me. You can't stay out here. It's too cold. You're gonna get hurt. But Mama said to wait. I know, but your mama would want you to be safe, right? She'd want you to be warm. Ava's lower lip trembled. Lily's whole body shook. Whether from cold or fear, Daniel couldn't tell. He looked back at the bus. The passengers watched through the windows, their faces pressed against the glass. Some looked concerned, some looked annoyed. All of them wanted to get home. Daniel stood and pulled out his phone, called dispatch. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. Dispatch. Yeah, this is Brooks on Route 47. I've got a situation. What kind of situation? 2 kids at 6th and Warren. Look like they've been abandoned. I need to know protocol. Static crackled on the line. Say again, you cut out. 2 children, Daniel said louder. Abandoned. What do I do? More static then. Stand by. Daniel waited. The wind howled. The girls shivered. Precious seconds ticked away. Finally, the dispatcher came back. Emergency services are delayed due to weather. Best we can do is get someone there in an hour. Maybe 2. An hour? Daniel couldn't keep the disbelief out of his voice. These kids are freezing. I hear you, Brooks. But we're stretched thin. Everyone's stretched thin. Do what you can until help arrives. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone, then at the girls, then at the bus full of people waiting for him to do his job and get them home. He had 3 choices. Leave the girls here and call the police himself. Hope they arrived before the children froze to death. Stay here with them. Abandon his route. Abandon his passengers. Probably lose his job. Or bring them onto the bus. Break about 17 different rules. Risk everything he'd worked for. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to choose option 1. Call the police. Let the professionals handle it. He had his own kids to think about. His own fragile life to protect. But when he looked at Ava and Lily, at their red hands and their frightened eyes and their too thin jackets, he couldn't do it. He couldn't leave them. Come with me, he said, making a decision that would change everything. Let's get you warm. Ava hesitated. But Mama, we'll find your mama, I promise. But first we gotta get you out of this snow. He held out his hand. After a long moment, Ava took it. Her fingers felt like ice. Lily grabbed her sister's other hand, and together they followed Daniel back to the bus. The passengers watched as he guided the girls up the steps. Daniel could feel their judgment, their questions, their doubt. He ignored all of it and settled the girls in the front seat. Then he grabbed the emergency kit from under his seat, blankets, granola bars, bottled water. He wrapped the blankets around the twins and handed them each a granola bar. You eat that, he said gently, and you tell me if you need anything else. Lily finally spoke. Her voice was even quieter than Ava's. Thank you. Daniel's throat tightened. You're welcome, sweetheart. He returned to the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. His hands were shaking. From cold. From adrenaline. From the weight of what he'd just done. Behind him, the old man called out again. We gonna sit here all night? Daniel took a breath. Let it out slow. No, sir, he said. We're moving. He put the bus in drive and pulled away from the corner. The snow swirled. The wind pushed against the bus like it was trying to force them backward. But Daniel kept driving. He didn't know where he was going. Didn't know how this would end. Didn't know if he'd just saved these girls or ruined his own life. All he knew was that leaving them wasn't an option. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Ava and Lily huddled together under the blankets, chewing their granola bars. They looked so small, so fragile, so impossibly young to be facing this kind of cold. Daniel's mind raced. He needed to get them to a shelter, needed to find someone official to take responsibility, needed to do this by the book so nobody could accuse him of anything. But first he had to finish his route, had to get his passengers home, had to hold all of this together for just a little bit longer. The bus crawled through the blizzard. Passengers got off at their stops, bundled against the cold, hurrying toward whatever warmth waited for them. Nobody said anything about the girls. Nobody asked questions. They just left. Within 20 minutes, the bus was empty except for Daniel and the twins. He pulled over and turned in his seat to face them. "Okay," he said. "Here's what we're gonna do. I'm taking you to a shelter. There's one about 10 minutes from here. They'll keep you warm and safe while we find your mama." Ava nodded slowly. Lily said nothing. Daniel put the bus back in gear and headed east toward the Grace Street shelter. He'd driven past it 100 times. Never had reason to stop before. Please be open, he thought. Please let this be simple. But when he pulled up to the shelter 15 minutes later, his heart sank. The lights were off. The doors were locked. A handwritten sign taped to the window read, "Closed due to weather." Emergency services suspended until further notice. Daniel sat staring at the sign, his mind blank with disbelief. Closed. Of course it was closed. Because nothing could be easy. Nothing could work out. He tried calling emergency services again. Got a busy signal. Tried dispatch. Same thing. The snow piled up on the windshield. The engine idled. The twins watched him with those huge, trusting eyes, and Daniel realized with creeping horror that he was out of options. He couldn't leave them at a closed shelter, couldn't abandon them on the street, couldn't keep driving around all night hoping for a miracle, which left only one choice, the choice he'd been trying to avoid, the choice that terrified him more than anything. He turned to face the girls. "Change of plans," he said, trying to sound calm. "You're gonna come home with me, just for tonight, just until we can get this sorted out." Ava's eyes widened. "You're home?" "Yeah. I've got 2 boys about your age. We'll get you fed, get you warm, and tomorrow we'll figure everything out." "Is that allowed?" Ava asked. Daniel almost laughed, almost cried. "Honestly," he said, "I don't know, but it's the best I can do." He pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Patterson, "Running late, picking up boys soon, long story." Her response came immediately. "Take your time, baby. They're safe with me." Daniel closed his eyes, sent up a prayer to whoever might be listening. Then he put the bus in gear and headed toward the depot. He had no idea how he'd explain this to his sons. No idea how he'd explain it to Mrs. Patterson or his supervisor or anyone else who asked questions. All he knew was that somewhere along the way, those 2 frightened girls in their too thin jackets had become his responsibility. And Daniel Brooks had never walked away from a responsibility in his life, even when it cost him everything. The bus depot sat at the edge of the industrial district, a gray concrete building that looked exactly as tired as Daniel felt. He pulled into his assigned bay and cut the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. Behind him, the twins sat perfectly still, wrapped in their blankets like small ghosts. Daniel turned to face them. "I need to check in real quick. You 2 stay right here, okay? Don't move." Ava nodded. Lily just blinked. He climbed out of the bus and jogged through the snow to the depot office. His supervisor, Mr. Thompson, sat behind a desk covered in paperwork and empty coffee cups. He looked up when Daniel entered, his weathered face creased with exhaustion. "Brooks, thought you'd gotten stuck out there." "Almost did." Daniel tried to sound casual, tried to keep his voice steady. "Listen, I need to talk to you about something." Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed. "What kind of something?" Daniel took a breath. There was no good way to say this. "I found 2 kids on my route. Little girls. They were begging on a street corner in the middle of the blizzard." Mr. Thompson set down his pen. And I brought them on the bus. Tried to take them to Grace Street shelter, but it's closed. Emergency services aren't responding, so He paused. "I'm taking them home with me. Just for tonight." The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. Finally, Mr. Thompson spoke. "You brought passengers' children onto the bus?" "No. Nobody's children. Just abandoned kids. Abandoned." Mr. Thompson rubbed his face. "Jesus, Brooks, you know what kind of liability." I know, but I couldn't leave them. You should have called the police. I tried. Nobody's responding. The whole city's shutting down. Mr. Thompson stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow. Daniel waited, his heart pounding. This was it. This was where he'd get suspended, maybe fired, maybe lose the only job that kept a roof over his boys' heads. But Mr. Thompson just sighed. Where are they now? On the bus. Waiting. Bring them in. Let me see them. Daniel hurried back to the bus. The twins looked up when he appeared. Come on, he said gently. Someone wants to meet you. They followed him across the snowy lot, still wrapped in their blankets. The wind had died down slightly, but the cold remained brutal. Inside the office, Mr. Thompson's expression softened when he saw them. He crouched down, his knees cracking. Hey there, he said. What are your names? Ava, the taller girl said. And this is Lily. Ava and Lily. Those are pretty names. He looked up at Daniel. How long were they out there? Since this morning, according to Ava. Mr. Thompson's jaw tightened. He stood and pulled Daniel aside, lowering his voice. You can't keep them, Brooks. You know that, right? I'm not trying to keep them. I'm just trying to keep them alive until someone official can take over. And what if that someone official asks why you didn't follow protocol? Then I'll tell them the truth. That protocol didn't account for 2 7-year-old girls freezing to death while I waited for backup that never came. Mr. Thompson studied him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're gonna get yourself in trouble one of these days. Probably, but not today. Mr. Thompson almost smiled. Almost. Get them out of here. Take them home. Keep your phone on. And Brooks? Yeah. Document everything. Times, temperatures, who you called, everything, just in case. Relief flooded through Daniel. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This ain't over. Daniel knew that, but at least he wasn't alone anymore. He guided the girls back out into the snow and toward his car, a 15-year-old sedan that barely ran but got him where he needed to go. The twins climbed into the back seat without being told. They were so quiet, so obedient. Like they'd learned that making noise only brought trouble. Daniel started the engine and waited for the heat to kick in. It took almost 5 minutes. We're gonna pick up my boys first, he told them. Then we'll all go home together. Sound okay? Okay, Ava whispered. Lily said nothing. The drive to Mrs. Patterson's building took 20 minutes. The streets were nearly empty now. Just a few stubborn drivers and emergency vehicles pushing through the snow. Daniel pulled into the parking lot and killed the engine. You two stay here. I'll be right back. He hurried up the stairs to the second floor and knocked on Mrs. Patterson's door. She answered immediately, her lined face breaking into a smile. There you are. I was starting to worry. Sorry, it's been a night. He glanced back toward the stairs. Listen, I need to tell you something. It's gonna sound crazy. Mrs. Patterson's smile faded. What happened? I found 2 little girls on my route, abandoned in the snow. Emergency services couldn't get to them, shelters are closed, so I'm bringing them home, just for tonight. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her chest. Lord have mercy, 2 little girls? Twins, about 7 years old. And their mother? Gone. They don't know where. Mrs. Patterson shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. This world, this cruel world. She turned toward her living room. Caleb, Liam, your daddy's here. 2 boys came running. Caleb, 9 years old, tall for his age with his mother's eyes, and Liam, 5, still baby-faced and full of boundless energy. They crashed into Daniel with hugs that nearly knocked him over. Dad! Liam squealed. We made cookies with Mrs. P. Did you now? Daniel kissed the top of his head. That's great, buddy. Caleb pulled back, studying his father's face with that too-knowing gaze. "Something wrong, Dad?" Daniel knelt down so he was eye level with both boys. "Listen, I need to tell you something important. There are 2 girls in the car, twin sisters. They got lost in the snow and nobody can come help them tonight, so they're gonna stay with us. Just for tonight." Liam's eyes went wide. "Girls?" "Yeah, and they're scared and cold and hungry, so I need you both to be kind, to make them feel safe. Can you do that?" Caleb nodded immediately. "Yes, sir." Liam bounced on his toes. "Can they sleep in my room?" "We'll figure that out. Come on." Daniel gathered his boys and thanked Mrs. Patterson, who pressed a container of cookies into his hands. "For the girls," she said. "Everybody needs something sweet when the world's being hard." Daniel hugged her. "Thank you. You're doing a good thing, Daniel. Your Maria would be proud." The words hit him square in the chest. He blinked back sudden tears and nodded. Then he herded his boys down the stairs and back to the car. Ava and Lily sat exactly where he'd left them, still wrapped in their blankets. They looked up when the back doors opened and Caleb and Liam climbed in. For a moment, nobody spoke. 4 children staring at each other in the dim light of the car's interior. Then Liam grinned. "Hi, I'm Liam. This is my brother Caleb. We made cookies. Do you like cookies?" Ava blinked. "Yes." "Good, Mrs. P makes the best cookies in the whole world. She puts extra chocolate chips." The tension broke. Ava's shoulders relaxed slightly. Lily's eyes tracked to the container Mrs. Patterson had given them. Caleb spoke more quietly. "What are your names?" "I'm Ava. This is Lily." "It's nice to meet you." Caleb's voice was gentle, mature. "Don't worry. Our dad's really good at taking care of people." Daniel's throat tightened. He started the car without saying anything. Couldn't trust his voice. The drive home took another 15 minutes. The boys chattered softly in the back seat, Liam asking questions, Caleb answering them when the twins stayed quiet. Daniel let the sound wash over him. Let it fill the spaces where fear and doubt tried to take root. His apartment building loomed out of the snow, a 4-story brick structure that had seen better days, peeling paint, broken security lights, but it was home. Daniel parked and everyone piled out. He carried the container of cookies while the boys led the way up to the 3rd floor. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But it was clean, warm, safe. The twins stood in the entryway, dripping melted snow onto the worn linoleum. "Bathroom's down the hall if you need it," Daniel said. "Living room's right here. Kitchen's through there. Make yourselves comfortable." Ava and Lily didn't move. They just stood there, looking lost. Caleb stepped forward. "You can put your jackets on the coat rack, and maybe you want to sit on the couch. It's pretty comfy." Slowly, carefully, the girls removed their thin jackets. Underneath, they wore shirts that were too big and pants that were too short. Their arms were painfully thin. Daniel's heart broke all over again. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked gently. Ava thought about it. Yesterday morning. They'd been begging on a corner for over 24 hours without food. Daniel moved into action. "Okay, everybody sit down. I'm making soup." He pulled out his biggest pot and started heating chicken broth. Added noodles, frozen vegetables, some leftover rotisserie chicken he'd been saving. It wasn't fancy, but it was hot and filling. While the soup cooked, he let the boys open the cookie container. They passed it around, and for the first time Daniel saw Lily smile. Just a tiny upturn at the corners of her mouth when she bit into a chocolate chip cookie. "Good, right?" Liam said through a mouthful of crumbs. Lily nodded. The soup finished, and Daniel ladled it into bowls. They ate at the small kitchen table, 4 children crowded around, slurping and chewing and warming up from the inside. Daniel stood at the counter watching them. His boys, and 2 girls who weren't his but somehow had become his responsibility anyway. Caleb caught his eye and smiled. That knowing, too old smile that said, "I see what you're doing, Dad. I understand." Daniel smiled back. After dinner, he got the twins settled on the couch with more blankets. Found some old clothes that might fit. Shirts from when Caleb was younger, sweatpants with drawstrings. "You can change in the bathroom," he told them. "And if you need anything, just ask." They disappeared down the hall. Daniel collapsed into the armchair and pulled out his phone. He needed to try emergency services again. Needed to get this documented. Needed to do something official before this whole situation spun out of control. But before he could dial, there was a knock at the door. Daniel's blood ran cold. Who would be knocking this late, in this weather? He stood and looked through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, mid-30s, wearing a heavy coat and carrying a bag. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her expression was all business. Daniel opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" The woman held up an ID badge. "Rachel Moore, Social Services. I got a call about 2 minor children brought to this address." Daniel's stomach dropped. "How did you—" "Your supervisor called it in. Standard protocol when minors are involved." Her eyes moved past him into the apartment. "Are they here?" "Yes, but I need to see them." Daniel stepped aside. Rachel entered, her gaze sweeping the small space. She took in the soup bowls on the table, the blankets on the couch, the evidence of hasty care. The twins emerged from the bathroom wearing their borrowed clothes. They stopped when they saw Rachel, their faces going pale. "It's okay," Daniel said quickly. "This is Ms. Moore. She's here to help." Rachel crouched down, her expression softening slightly. "Hi there. I'm Rachel. What are your names?" "Ava," the taller girl said, her voice barely audible. "And this is Lily. It's nice to meet you both." Rachel stood and looked at Daniel. "Can we talk? Privately?" Daniel glanced at Caleb. "Keep an eye on everyone for a minute?" Caleb nodded seriously. "Yes, sir." Daniel led Rachel into the kitchen, his heart pounding. "Before you say anything," he started, "I know this looks bad, but I couldn't—" "Mr. Brooks." Rachel held up a hand. "I'm not here to accuse you of anything. Your supervisor explained the situation. I just need to understand what happened." Relief flooded through him. "They were begging on 6th and Warren, in the middle of the blizzard. I tried calling emergency services, tried taking them to the shelter, but everything was closed or delayed. So I brought them here." "And their mother?" "They said she told them to wait for her this morning. That's all I know." Rachel pulled out a notebook and started writing. "Have you contacted the police?" "Tried. Couldn't get through." "Okay, I'll make the calls from here." She paused, studying him. "You understand you could be in serious trouble if this goes wrong?" "I understand." But leaving them wasn't an option. Rachel's expression shifted. Something softened in her eyes. "No, I suppose it wasn't." She returned to the living room and spoke quietly with the twins. Asked them questions about their mother, about where they lived, about what had happened. They answered in whispers, clinging to each other. After 15 minutes, Rachel closed her notebook and stood. "They're safe here for tonight," she said to Daniel. "Emergency services won't be able to respond until morning anyway. But I need to make this official." "What does that mean?" "It means you're providing temporary emergency shelter under crisis conditions. It means I'll be checking in tomorrow. And it means if their mother shows up, you call me immediately." "Understood." Rachel's eyes moved to where Caleb and Liam sat with the twins, the 4 of them sharing the blankets. "You have good kids, Mr. Brooks." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This situation is complicated. There are protocols, procedures. If the wrong person asks the wrong questions, I'll deal with it." Rachel studied him for a long moment. Then she pulled out a business card and handed it to him. "My cell number's on there. Call me if anything happens, anything at all." Daniel took the card. I will. She moved toward the door, then paused. Mr. Brooks, what you did tonight, bringing them in from the cold, that took courage. A lot of people would have looked the other way. I couldn't. I know. Something sad flickered across her face. Not everyone can say that. She left, and Daniel locked the door behind her, stood there for a moment, processing. When he turned back to the living room, 4 pairs of eyes were watching him. Is she gonna take us away? Ava asked, her voice small and frightened. Daniel sat down on the floor in front of them. Not tonight. Tonight you're staying right here, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. Together. Okay? Okay, Ava whispered. Lily reached out and took her sister's hand. The night stretched on. Daniel got the boys ready for bed, then made up the couch for the twins. They curled up together under the blankets, 2 small bodies seeking warmth and safety. Thank you, Ava said as Daniel tucked them in. You're welcome, sweetheart. Are you gonna leave? The question broke his heart. No, I'll be right down the hall. And if you need anything at all, you just call out, okay? Okay. He turned off the lights and checked on his boys. They were already asleep, exhausted from the long, strange evening. Daniel stood in the doorway watching them breathe. His sons. His reason for everything. And in the living room, 2 girls who weren't his, but who had trusted him anyway. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Didn't know if he'd made the right choice or a terrible mistake. All he knew was that tonight, 4 children were safe and warm and fed. And sometimes, that had to be enough. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in the armchair near the couch, wrapped in an old blanket, watching the twins breathe. Every time one of them shifted, he tensed. Every small sound made him alert. What if they woke up scared? What if they tried to leave? What if their mother showed up banging on the door in the middle of the night? The questions circled his mind like vultures. Around 3 in the morning, Lily started whimpering, small, broken sounds that cut through the silence. Daniel moved to the edge of the couch, careful not to startle her. Hey, he whispered. You're okay. You're safe. Lily's eyes opened, unfocused and wet with tears. She looked around the dark apartment like she couldn't remember where she was. It's me, Daniel. You're at my apartment. Remember? You and Ava. Understanding slowly returned. Lily's breathing steadied, but the tears kept falling. What's wrong, sweetheart? Daniel asked gently. I want my mama. The words were so simple, so devastating. I know you do. We're gonna find her, I promise. What if she doesn't come back? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Couldn't lie and say everything would be fine. Couldn't promise what he had no power to guarantee. So instead he said, whatever happens, you're not alone, okay? You've got your sister, and right now, you've got me and my boys. We're gonna take care of you. Lily studied his face in the darkness. Then she nodded and closed her eyes again. Daniel sat back in the armchair, his heart heavy. He thought about Maria, about how she would have handled this. She'd always been better with emotions, better with finding the right words. She would have known exactly what to say to make Lily feel safe. But Maria was gone, and Daniel was doing the best he could with what he had. Dawn came slowly, painting the windows gray. The snow had stopped, but the city remained buried. Daniel could hear plows working in the distance, their scraping sounds echoing through the cold air. The twins woke around 7, sitting up simultaneously like they shared a single brain. They looked around the apartment, taking in their surroundings in the morning light. Morning, Daniel said softly. You sleep okay? Ava nodded. Lily said nothing. I'm gonna make breakfast. You like pancakes? Both girls' eyes widened. Ava spoke carefully like she was afraid of asking for too much. We like pancakes. Good. Because pancakes are basically the only thing I know how to make that doesn't come from a box. He moved into the kitchen and started mixing batter. The familiar routine steadied him, measuring, stirring, heating the griddle. His boys emerged soon after, drawn by the smell of cooking. Caleb looked rumpled and sleepy. Liam bounced into the kitchen with his usual morning energy. "Are they still here?" Liam whispered loudly. "Yes. And be nice." "I'm always nice." Breakfast was chaotic in the best way. 6 people crowded around a table meant for 4. Pancakes stacked high. Syrup everywhere. The twins ate like they'd never seen food before. Quickly, desperately, like it might disappear. Daniel made sure their plates stayed full. Afterward, while the kids watched cartoons, Daniel's phone rang. Rachel Moore. He stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Mr. Brooks, how did the night go?" "Fine. Everyone's safe. Fed. Warm." "Good. I've been making calls. Police have the mother's information from the girls' descriptions. But there's no missing persons report. No calls from anyone looking for them." Daniel's stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means we're in a holding pattern. I need to do a home visit today. Make sure the girls are in appropriate conditions. Then we'll figure out next steps." "When are you coming?" 2 hours. Is that okay?" "Yeah. We'll be here." Daniel hung up and stood in the hallway, trying to calm his racing heart. A home visit. They'd inspect his apartment, ask questions, judge whether he was fit to care for 2 children who weren't his. What if they found him lacking? What if they decided he'd made a mistake bringing the twins here? He went back inside and started cleaning frantically, washing dishes, picking up toys, making everything look as presentable as possible. Caleb watched from the couch. "Dad, you okay?" "Fine, buddy, just tidying up." "Because of the lady who's coming?" Daniel paused. His son was too perceptive. "Yeah, I want things to look nice." "It already looks nice. This is our home." The simple statement hit Daniel hard. Caleb was right. This was their home. Not perfect, not fancy, but filled with love and care. That had to count for something. Rachel arrived exactly 2 hours later. She came with paperwork and a tired expression that suggested she'd been working through the night. Daniel let her in. The kids sat on the couch, watching with wide eyes. "Good morning, everyone," Rachel said. Her voice was softer than last night, more human. She spent the next hour inspecting the apartment, checking the locks on the windows, looking at the food in the fridge, asking Daniel questions about his job, his income, his childcare arrangements. He answered honestly, showed her everything. Finally, she sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for Daniel to join her. "Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be straight with you. This situation is unusual. You're not a licensed foster parent. You're not family. Technically, what you did last night, bringing unrelated minors into your home, could be seen as problematic." Daniel's heart sank. "But," Rachel continued, "I've reviewed everything. Your home is clean and safe. You have steady employment, your children are well cared for, and most importantly, you acted in good faith during an emergency. So what happens now? The girls will need to be placed in official care. But given the weather and the backlog in the system, that might take a few days. I can arrange for temporary emergency foster placement or..." She paused. "Or they could stay here, under my supervision, with daily check-ins." Daniel blinked. "Here? Really?" "If you're willing. It would be the least disruptive for them. And honestly, Mr. Brooks, they seem comfortable with you. That matters." Relief washed through him. "I'm willing." Rachel pulled out more paperwork. "Then I need you to sign these. They formalize you as an emergency placement provider, temporary, just until we find their mother or arrange permanent care." Daniel signed without hesitation. After Rachel left, Daniel returned to the living room. The twins looked up at him with questions in their eyes. "You're staying here for a few more days," he told them. "Is that okay?" Ava nodded. Lily whispered, "Thank you." The day passed quietly. The boys shared their toys with the twins. They built Lego towers and watched movies and played games that didn't quite follow the actual rules. Daniel watched from the kitchen, his heart full and breaking at the same time. That evening after dinner, there was another knock at the door. Daniel opened it to find Mr. Thompson standing in the hallway, snow dusting his coat. "Sir," Daniel said, surprised, "what are you doing here?" "Needed to see for myself how you're holding up." Mr. Thompson stepped inside, his eyes immediately finding the children. "These the girls?" "Yes, sir, Ava and Lily." Mr. Thompson nodded at them. "You doing okay?" "Yes, sir," Ava said quietly. "Good, that's good." He turned to Daniel. "Can we talk?" They stepped into the hallway, and Daniel's anxiety spiked. This was it. This was where he got fired. But Mr. Thompson just sighed. "I talked to the main office. Explained the situation. They're not happy about you breaking protocol, but they understand why you did it." "Am I in trouble?" "Officially, you're getting a written warning. Unofficially, I told them if they fired you over this, I'd quit too." Mr. Thompson's weathered face softened. "You did the right thing, Brooks. Don't let anyone tell you different." Daniel felt his eyes burn. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Those kids need someone like you." After Mr. Thompson left, Daniel stood in the hallway for a long moment, letting the words sink in. You did the right thing. He wanted to believe that. Needed to believe that. But doubt still whispered in the back of his mind. What if helping the twins hurt his own boys? What if he was spreading himself too thin? What if this all fell apart? When he went back inside, Caleb was waiting. "Dad, can we talk?" Daniel sat down on the couch. "What's up, buddy?" Caleb glanced at the twins, who were playing with Liam in the corner. Then he lowered his voice. "Are we doing the right thing? Helping them?" The question was so earnest, so full of genuine concern, that Daniel's chest ached. "What do you think?" he asked. Caleb thought about it. I think Mom would have helped them. She always helped people." Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah, she did. And I think if we have enough for us, we should share it with people who don't have enough, even if it's hard." 9 years old, and already wiser than most adults. "You're right," Daniel said softly. "Your mom would be really proud of you, Caleb." "Is she proud of you?" The question hit like a physical blow. Daniel thought about Maria, about how she'd given her last dollar to homeless people, how she'd volunteered at the food bank even when they could barely afford groceries, how she'd believed that love wasn't something you rationed, it was something you poured out freely. "I hope so," Daniel said. "I really hope so." That night, after all the children were asleep, Daniel sat alone in the dark apartment. He thought about the past 2 days, about the choice he'd made in the snow, about the ripple effects spreading through his life. He was exhausted, scared, overwhelmed. But he wasn't alone anymore. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Just wanted to check in. "How's everyone doing?" Daniel typed back, "Good. Kids are asleep, all safe." Her response came quickly. "Thank you for doing this. I know it's not easy." Daniel stared at the message. Then he typed, "Can I ask you something? Why did you become a social worker?" The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I lost someone once, a long time ago. I couldn't save them, but I can try to save others." Daniel read the words twice, felt the weight of shared grief. "I'm sorry," he typed. "Me too. But we keep going, right? That's all we can do." "Yeah, we keep going." He set down his phone and looked around his small apartment, at the blankets piled on the couch, at the dishes in the sink, at the evidence of life being lived, messy and imperfect and real. Somewhere in this city, a mother was missing. Children were scared. Systems were failing. But here, in this moment, 4 children were safe. And Daniel was learning that sometimes strength wasn't about having all the answers. Sometimes it was just about showing up. Even when it cost everything. Even when you were afraid. Even when you didn't know how the story would end. Morning came too fast. Daniel woke with a crick in his neck from sleeping in the armchair again. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the old radiator. He checked on all 4 children, still sleeping, still safe. His phone showed 3 missed calls, all from Rachel. His stomach dropped. He called her back immediately. "Mr. Brooks," she answered on the first ring. "We need to talk." "What happened?" "We found the mother." Daniel's heart stopped. "Where?" "Hospital. She's been there since the day she left the girls. Psychotic break. She's getting treatment, but—" Rachel paused. "She can't take care of them right now. Maybe not for a long time." "So what happens to Ava and Lily?" "Foster care. I'm working on finding a placement, but it could take weeks. The system is overwhelmed." Daniel looked toward the living room, at 2 small bodies curled up under blankets. "They can stay here," he heard himself say. "Mr. Brooks, I mean it, however long it takes. They can stay." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure? This could be complicated. There are evaluations, background checks, home studies." "I'm sure." Another pause. Then, "Okay, I'll start the paperwork." When Daniel hung up, he found Caleb standing in the hallway, watching him. "They're staying longer?" his son asked. "Yeah, is that okay with you?" Caleb thought about it. Then he smiled. "Yeah, Dad, it's okay." And in that moment, Daniel realized something. He'd spent 3 years just surviving, just getting through each day, just holding himself and his boys together with willpower and exhaustion. But now, for the first time since Maria died, he was doing something more than surviving. He was living. He was choosing kindness even when it was hard, choosing hope even when it was scary, choosing to open his heart even when it had already been broken. And maybe that was what strength really meant. Not having all the answers, not being fearless, just showing up, day after day, for the people who needed you, even when, especially when, it cost you everything you had to give. The days that followed settled into a new rhythm. Daniel woke before dawn, made breakfast for 4 children instead of 2, got everyone dressed and fed and ready for whatever the day brought. Rachel came by every morning like clockwork. She'd check on the twins, ask questions, fill out endless paperwork. Sometimes she stayed for coffee. Sometimes she just nodded and left. But she always came. The twins were slowly opening up. Lily spoke more now, small sentences instead of single words. Ava smiled occasionally, though it never quite reached her eyes. They were healing, slowly, in the way children heal when given safety and consistency and patience. Caleb took his role as big brother seriously. He helped the twins with everything, tying shoes, brushing teeth, understanding the house rules. He was gentle and patient in a way that made Daniel's chest ache with pride. Liam just loved them. Simple as that. He shared his toys without being asked, held their hands when they looked scared, made them laugh with his silly faces and endless stories. The apartment felt crowded, too small for 6 people living on top of each other, but it also felt full, alive. Like a home instead of just a place to sleep. Daniel's shifts at the depot continued. Mr. Thompson never mentioned the written warning again, just clapped Daniel on the shoulder one day and said, "You're doing good, Brooks, real good." But the exhaustion was catching up. Daniel worked 8-hour shifts, came home to 4 kids who needed attention, stayed up late making sure everyone was settled. He ran on coffee and determination and the rapidly dwindling fumes of his reserves. 1 week after he'd found the twins, Rachel called him aside after her morning visit. "Can we talk?" Her expression was serious. "Alone?" Daniel's stomach tightened. He asked Caleb to watch everyone, then followed Rachel into the hallway. "What's wrong?" he asked. Rachel leaned against the wall, looking more tired than usual. "Nothing's wrong, but we need to discuss the situation. The girl's mother is still hospitalized. The doctors say it could be months before she's stable enough for supervised visits, let alone custody." "Okay, so they stay here. That's what we agreed." "It's not that simple. The longer they stay, the more complicated this becomes. You'd need to be formally licensed as a foster parent. That means background checks, home inspections, training classes. It's a long process." Daniel felt the weight of it settling on his shoulders. "How long?" "Months. Maybe longer." Rachel studied his face. "I need to know if you're really prepared for this, because those girls are getting attached to you, to your boys. And if you change your mind halfway through, I won't. You can't know that." "Yes, I can." Daniel met her eyes. "I know what it's like to lose someone, to feel abandoned. I won't do that to them." Rachel's expression softened. "You're a good man, Daniel Brooks, but being good doesn't make this easy." "I know." "Do you? Because right now you're running on fumes. I can see it. You're exhausted, stressed. How long can you keep this up?" Daniel didn't have an answer. He just knew he couldn't stop. Rachel sighed. "I'm not trying to discourage you. I just want you to understand what you're signing up for. This isn't a few days anymore. This is potentially months, maybe longer. Are you really ready for that?" Daniel thought about Ava and Lily. About how they'd looked standing in the snow, hands outstretched, begging for help. About how they looked now, safe, fed, starting to trust. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm ready." Rachel nodded slowly. "Okay, then I'll start the formal paperwork. But Daniel, you need to take care of yourself too. You can't help anyone if you collapse." She left, and Daniel stood in the hallway, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. He wanted to be strong, wanted to be enough, but the truth was, he was barely holding on. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out in front of him. Rent, electric, water, groceries for 6 instead of 3. His paycheck only stretched so far. He'd been supplementing with his emergency savings, the small fund he'd been building for emergencies. But that was almost gone now. Another month of this, and he'd be choosing between rent and food. The stress made his chest tight, made it hard to breathe. He thought about calling someone. But who? Mrs. Patterson was already doing so much. Mr. Thompson had his own problems. And he had no family left except a sister 3 states away who had her own struggles. He was alone in this. Completely, terrifyingly alone. Daniel put his head in his hands and let himself feel it. The exhaustion, the fear, the crushing weight of responsibility. A soft sound made him look up. Caleb stood in the doorway, wearing his dinosaur pajamas. "Dad? You okay?" Daniel quickly wiped his eyes. "Fine, buddy. Just tired." Caleb walked over and climbed into the chair next to him. He looked at the bills, then at his father. "Are we in trouble?" he asked quietly. Daniel wanted to lie, wanted to protect his son from adult worries, but Caleb had already seen too much, already understood too much. "We're tight on money," Daniel admitted. "But we'll figure it out. We always do." "Because of Ava and Lily?" "No." "Well, yes, but not because of them. Just, life is expensive." Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have money in my piggy bank. From my birthday. You can have it." Daniel's throat closed up. "Caleb, no. That's your money. But you need it more. No, buddy. Your job is to be a kid. My job is to worry about money." "But what if we can't afford to keep them? What if they have to leave?" And there it was. The fear Daniel had been avoiding. The possibility that scared him more than anything. That he'd fail. that he wouldn't be enough, that he'd have to tell Ava and Lily they couldn't stay. "We'll find a way," Daniel said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I promise." Caleb studied his face. Then he hugged him, fierce and tight and full of trust that Daniel wasn't sure he deserved. "You're a good dad," Caleb whispered. Daniel held his son and tried not to fall apart. The next day, Rachel showed up with someone else, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a professional smile. "Daniel, this is Patricia Chen. She's a foster care coordinator. She's here to do your initial home study." Daniel's heart hammered. This was it, the first real test. Patricia spent 2 hours inspecting everything, the bedrooms, the kitchen, the bathroom. She asked questions about his work schedule, his child care plans, his support system. She interviewed the children separately, talked to them about how they felt, whether they were safe, whether they had everything they needed. Through it all, Daniel tried to stay calm, tried to project confidence he didn't feel. Finally, Patricia sat down with him and Rachel at the kitchen table. "Mr. Brooks," she began, "I'll be honest. Your situation is unusual. You're a single father with limited income, working full-time, trying to care for 4 children in a small apartment." Daniel's heart sank. "But," Patricia continued, "your home is clean and safe. Your children are well cared for and happy, and the twins have clearly bonded with you and your sons." She smiled. "I'm recommending approval for emergency foster placement, pending completion of training and background checks." Relief flooded through Daniel so fast he felt dizzy. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. You have a lot of work ahead of you. Training classes, paperwork, monthly check-ins, and the twins' situation is complicated. Their mother may never regain custody. You need to be prepared for that possibility." "I am." Patricia studied him. "Are you prepared for the possibility that she might? That you could invest months or years in these girls only to have them return to their biological parent?" The question hit hard. Daniel hadn't let himself think about that, about loving Ava and Lily, about them becoming part of his family, only to lose them. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't walk away from them now." Patricia nodded. "That's an honest answer. I respect that." After she left, Rachel lingered. "You did good today," she said. "I just answered questions." "No. You showed her who you are. That matters more than you think." Daniel looked at her. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion in her eyes that mirrored his own, the weight she carried. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "This job, it must be brutal." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "I told you I lost someone once. I didn't tell you who." Daniel waited. "My daughter," Rachel said softly. "She was 5. Car accident. I was driving." Her voice cracked. "I walked away. She didn't." Daniel felt his chest constrict. "Rachel, I'm so sorry." "It was 8 years ago, but it never stops hurting." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I became a social worker because I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save other people's children. Maybe that can mean something." "It does mean something. You saved Ava and Lily." "No. You did that. I just helped with the paperwork." Daniel shook his head. "We both did. Together." Rachel smiled sadly. "Yeah, together." Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition. A shared understanding of what it meant to carry grief and keep going anyway. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for everything. Thank you for proving that good people still exist." After she left, Daniel stood in the quiet apartment and let himself feel it. The hope, the fear, the possibility of something new growing from the ruins of something lost. That weekend, Daniel took all 4 kids to the park. The snow had melted enough to expose patches of brown grass. The playground equipment was still wet, but the kids didn't care. They ran and climbed and laughed. Ava went down the slide with Liam. Lily played on the swings while Caleb pushed her gently. Daniel sat on a bench and watched. Just watched his makeshift family finding joy in simple things. A woman approached, elderly, with white hair and warm eyes. "Those your children?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, then said, "Yes, yes, they are. You're doing a good job, I can tell." "How can you tell?" she smiled. "Because they're happy. And happiness doesn't come from things, it comes from love." After she walked away, Daniel sat with those words. Happiness doesn't come from things, it comes from love. He thought about his tiny apartment, his old car, his thin paycheck, all the things he didn't have. And then he thought about 4 children laughing in the sunshine, about Caleb's quiet strength, about Liam's boundless joy, about Ava learning to trust, about Lily learning to speak. Maybe he didn't have much, but what he had was enough. That night, after dinner, Ava approached him shyly. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Are you going to keep us? For real?" The question broke his heart and put it back together at the same time. Daniel knelt down so he was eye level with her. "I can't promise forever, Ava. Your mama might get better. Things might change, but I can promise that as long as you need a home, you have one here. With me and the boys, for as long as it takes." Ava's eyes filled with tears. "What if nobody wants us?" "Then I want you. Both of you. Okay?" She threw her arms around his neck and held on tight. Over her shoulder, Daniel saw Lily watching, saw the hope and fear warring in her eyes. He opened his other arm and she came running, both twins clinging to him, crying, releasing months of fear and grief. Caleb and Liam joined the hug without being asked. 5 people tangled together in the middle of the small living room. A family, broken and imperfect and completely real. Later, after the twins were asleep, Daniel sat with his boys. "Thank you," he said, "for being so amazing with Ava and Lily." "They're our sisters now," Liam said matter-of-factly. "Maybe not legally." "Doesn't matter," Caleb interrupted. "They're family. That's what Mom always said. Family isn't just blood. It's who you choose to love." Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. "Your mom was a smart woman." "Yeah," Caleb said softly. "She was." The weeks turned into months. The formal process crawled forward. Background checks, training classes, monthly evaluations. Through it all, Daniel showed up. Tired, scared, barely scraping by financially, but showing up nonetheless. Rachel became a regular presence, not just as a social worker, but as a friend. She brought groceries sometimes, helped with homework, sat with Daniel on hard nights when the weight felt too heavy. They never spoke about the possibility of something more. Both were too broken, too focused on survival. But the connection was there, quiet, patient, waiting. 4 months after Daniel found the twins in the snow, he got the call. The twins' mother had signed away her parental rights, permanently. Ava and Lily were free for adoption. Daniel sat on his couch, phone in hand, trying to process what that meant. Rachel arrived an hour later. "You heard?" she asked. "Yeah. How do you feel?" "Terrified, relieved, overwhelmed, all of it." Rachel sat beside him. "You don't have to adopt them. There are other families who would take them, good families." "I know. But they're already mine, in every way that matters." Rachel smiled. "Yeah, they are. Can I even do this? Single dad with 2 kids adopting 2 more? Is that even possible?" "There, with your income, your living situation, on paper it'll be hard." Rachel took his hand. "But I've seen you with those girls, Daniel. I've seen how they look at you, how your boys treat them. This is already a family. The paperwork is just catching up." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Will you help me?" "Every step of the way." That night, Daniel gathered all 4 children. "I need to tell you something important," he said. "Ava and Lily's mama decided she can't take care of them." which means they need a permanent home. Ava's face went pale. Lily gripped her sister's hand. I was thinking, Daniel continued carefully, that maybe they could stay here, forever, if they want, if you boys are okay with it. Liam jumped up immediately. Yes, forever. Caleb was more measured. He looked at the twins. Do you want to stay? Ava nodded, tears streaming down her face. Lily whispered, Please. Then it's settled, Caleb said. They're our sisters. Daniel felt his chest expand with something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. The adoption process took another 6 months, more paperwork, more evaluations, more nights wondering if it would actually happen. But finally, on a cold February morning, Daniel stood in a courtroom with 4 children and Rachel by his side. The judge looked down at them with kind eyes. Mr. Brooks, do you understand the responsibility you're taking on? Yes, Your Honor. Do you promise to love and care for Ava and Lily Carter as your own children? I do, with everything I have. The judge smiled. Then by the power vested in me, I hereby grant your petition for adoption. Ava and Lily Carter are now legally Ava and Lily Brooks. Congratulations. The courtroom erupted in applause. Mrs. Patterson was there, crying happy tears. Mr. Thompson stood in the back, grinning. Rachel hugged Daniel tight. And the children, all 4 of them, held on to each other and laughed. That evening, Daniel made a special dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. But they ate together at their cramped table, 6 people squeezed into a space meant for 4. After dinner, they looked at old photos. Daniel showed the twins pictures of Maria. This was your boy's mama? Ava asked. Yeah, her name was Maria. She would have loved you both so much. Is she sad we're here? Lily asked quietly. Daniel thought about that, about Maria's generous heart, her belief that love was infinite. No, sweetheart. She's not sad. I think she's happy. I think she's glad you found us. Later, after the children were finally asleep, Daniel stood on his small balcony. The city spread out before him, lights twinkling in the darkness. Rachel joined him, wrapped in one of his old jackets. You did it, she said. We did it. How does it feel? Daniel thought about that, about the exhaustion, the financial stress, the constant worry, about 4 children sleeping safe and warm inside, about a family built from loss and choice and stubborn hope. It feels right, he said finally. Scary, hard, but right. Rachel leaned against the railing. I've been thinking about what comes next for me. Yeah? I think I need to step back from field work, focus on policy. Maybe I can change things from the inside. You'd be amazing at that, she smiled. And I was thinking maybe I could stick around, help with the kids sometimes, if you want. Daniel looked at her, saw the hope and fear in her eyes that mirrored his own. I'd like that, he said softly. Just as friends. For now. For now. They stood together in the cold night air, 2 broken people who'd found each other through circumstances and stayed through choice. Inside, a child called out. Daniel went to check, just Liam, having a dream. He settled him back down, tucked him in, kissed his forehead. Then he checked on Caleb, on Ava, on Lily. 4 children, 4 hearts trusting him to keep them safe. It was terrifying, overwhelming, more than he ever thought he could handle. But as he stood in the doorway watching them sleep, Daniel realized something. He'd spent 3 years after Maria's death just surviving, just getting through each day. But somewhere along the way, maybe in a snow-covered street, maybe in a crowded apartment, maybe in the choice to say yes when it would have been easier to say no, he'd started living again. Started believing that broken things could be made whole, that love could grow in the cracks, That family wasn't just what you were born into, but what you built with courage and faith and stubborn, relentless hope. The snow had brought Ava and Lily to him. But what happened after? The choice to keep them, to fight for them, to love them, that was all him. And for the first time since Maria died, Daniel looked at his life and felt grateful. Not for the hardship, not for the loss, but for the second chance. For the opportunity to show his children, all 4 of them, that strength wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up, even when you were scared, even when you were tired, even when it cost everything you had. It was about choosing love every single day. Daniel turned off the lights and went to his own room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new worries, new moments of doubt. But tomorrow would also bring breakfast around a crowded table, laughter in the living room, 4 children who called him Dad. And that was more than enough. That was everything. The end.